Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. Very different type of video today. So basically what we're doing today is we have Marcus and Ryan, and I'm going to give them a moment to intro themselves in a second. But basically, we have two of our team members here to do like a mini podcast type of video. Not like a full-fledged like hour-long podcast. We're going to have a pretty short but meaningful discussion about a different topic. And I want to do this more frequently, so we'll see how this one goes firstly, and then maybe I'll get another two teammates to get on for another topic. But yeah, the real goal of this is to talk about something important in the community, and also to, you know, let you guys meet more of our team and get you guys some exposure that way. So yeah, we do have Ryan and Koos here. We have Koos in the green corner. So Koos, why don't you intro yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Marcus, also known as Couscous. I used to stream on Twitch quite a lot, so some of you may know me from there, but I've also been part of the community for a long time now, since the beginning. I'm an admin in the main group. I've recently, top 16 at Nationals. Been playing Dragon Ball competitively since the start, and I love every minute of it.
Awesome. All right, we have Ryan in the blue Dr. Seuss corner. Ryan, why don't you intro yourself?
Yeah, so also been playing since the beginning. Since set one, known these guys for a while now. Recently started to team up here, but um, haven't had the most recent success. But if you guys have been following competitive for a little bit, like 2019, 2018 was topping a lot. Won two events in 2019. But yeah, just love being on the team. Happy to be here for the video.
For sure, man. All right, thank you guys. All right, so basically what we're talking about today is Bandai's approach to the ban list. So obviously everyone has a different opinion about this, and basically the way we're going to look at this is Bandai definitely does pretty specific things when it comes to each of their ban lists, at least like more recent ban lists. So for example, one of those things is limiting cards to one. Some people hate that, some people are okay with that. Also just the different ways they decide to neuter decks, like when they took a really big axe to like the red aggro we had like 2.5 formats ago or so that's what we're gonna be talking about today. And I'm gonna let Koos go first here with his part of the discussion. So Koos, basically, how do you think Bandai approaches the ban list?
Uh, there's a couple of things that I do want to talk about regarding the ban list. First, there's the frequency of the ban list, right? We've been doing it lately where it's every new set of release, they've been pushing out a ban list. I personally like that. I like that a lot. I think it keeps the game fresh. It shows that they're very involved, but they're also very conservative when they come to the ban list, and I'm not sure if I like that. Uh, I feel like they could be a little bit more aggressive to change things up. They see a lot of data, but I feel like they're kind of holding back a little bit when it comes to making some of these decisions, and I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of that.
I would say I agree with that for sure. I do think sometimes they're a bit conservative when they should be a little bit more heavy-handed. But Ryan, what do you think about what Koos had to say?
Yeah, I agree for the most part on some of the decisions for the banless frequency. I don't know if I love every set. I do like some things about it, and there's some things I dislike. I never really played Yu-Gi-Oh that much, but I kind of like their twice a year ban list. But at the same time, their things can get out of hand with only doing it twice a year. So with the doing it every set, um, there's been some that I've really liked and some that I really disliked. But like at first, I wasn't a big fan of the frequency. I kind of like the it's being spread out, but more recently, I think that it's been able to address some problems. The only thing I haven't been a fan of was a lot of erratas. Like, I really don't like erratas. I think it's bad for newer players. And some of the erratas, I think, like for example, Dark Broly got errated twice. Which don't get me wrong, I think they definitely need an errata. Uh, like some things I feel like have gotten like super neutered, and I think that some things could get like unrestricted, which I think they can look at in the future. Like they've unrestricted Go 10, the swap top card Go 10. So I'd like to look at them unrestricting cards, but for the most part, I like the frequency, like who said.
Yeah, I think a lot of things have been brought up right there. I also like the frequency. I like how every set we can kind of just take a look at the format, see if anything needs to be dealt with. And I also will give kudos to Bandai because they took the time to do that emergency ban list where they had to kind of axe the King Vegeta aggro deck. So I do appreciate that a ban list is still possible even if it's not on like the exact deadline, so to speak. And you brought up erratas, which I actually have a different opinion about. I think erratas are generally okay, and I do get the comment saying like they're bad for new players. A lot of people share that sentiment. I just think that like whether it's a ban list or an errata, a player that's brand new to the game is not going to know about it. There's been so many times a new player has shown up to a local shop I've been at, and they're brand new to the game. They load up, they have a deck with them, and they're playing a card that's banned, right? They just don't know about it, right? So whether it's an errata or a ban, like players just have to be informed. I can definitely get behind the point though that erratas are probably more difficult to memorize, more difficult to totally understand, as opposed to like you just can't play this card in your deck versus like you can play this card but it does something like very different. So I do kind of get that point. Koos, how do you feel about like the erratas or even like limits to one? How do you feel about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's a good point that Ryan brought up, and I kind of agree with Ryan too. I don't like erratas. Even for the competitive players, there are times where if you errata so many different cards, we lose track of it too. Like I didn't notice, but there was like a errata on the Smoke Dragon card, I think, that was used in like the Gogeta Xeno deck. I think there was like a errata in a Mecha Kabura deck that even I wasn't aware of, and I like to think I'm really involved with the game. So I do think erratas kind of cause confusion, and it could create these opportunities where you just forget about it. And yeah, given in a high level match where people shouldn't forget about it, we're still people and humans, and it happens. So I'm kind of on Ryan's side here, where I feel like they should not lean towards erratas just for balancing. I think, for like text, English purposes and that type of stuff, erratas make sense. But to balance the card, I feel like it should just be either gone or limited or something. Don't errata just to balance the card.
Yeah, I think that's very
Also,
fair. Sorry, Ryan. I think that's really fair. Real quick, just like that. If they're gonna errata something, they should probably like come out with a reprint of it very quickly. But anyways, go ahead, Ryan.
yeah, another thing I thought of when we just after I brought up the errata topic is something they could include in the back of packs is like little cards that include like the banned or limited list or include like recent erratas. So that like players that open packs can see like are more accessible to like the banned or errata list or like anything like that. So it makes it easier for players to access because not everyone's checking the website and stuff. Not everyone that plays the game that competitively that's gonna go like look at the ban list. So they could put it in the packs in the like little cards like they come in the back that other card games do.
I think that's actually a really good idea. I never thought about that, so I do like that idea a lot. But moving on to the next part of what they sometimes do with the ban list, I know Ryan feels pretty strongly about this one, so I'm gonna let him go first. Limiting cards to one. I know generally that you're not a very big fan of that. You'll have your floor to kind of explain why. I feel like some cards are decent at one, like. But I've also felt in the past that if they're going to limit a card to one, they should just make it ultimate. Like Bloodlust, I've been saying for a long time, they should just like make it an ultimate, which I think would be a kind of a cool like budget alternative to SCRs. It would probably never be the optimal SCR, but at least it'd be a cool like budget thing. But yeah, Ryan, why don't you take the floor and talk about your opinion on one ofs?
Yeah, generally, I just don't like any of the or 90% of the limit to ones. I think that almost all the cards that are limited to one should just be banned. Like if a card is good enough to limit it to one, it just makes it like more variants of sackiness. Like before, like don't get me wrong, it was broken. Like for example, like Bergamo at 4. But now when your opponent Bergamos you, it just feels bad that they had their Bergamo and like it was very optimal. And the card's still very broken. It's still like very impactful to the game, and it's just cards like that are too impactful in like certain situations. I just think that they shouldn't be allowed in the game. So instead of limiting cards to one like that, I would prefer just them being banned. There's a few cards that were limited to one that I understand, but for the most part, I think that 90% of the cards that have been limited to one should just be banned. They're just really game impacting and really swingy. And recently they've gotten better at it, but like there's also a lot of limit to ones recently. Like the ban list you were talking about that hit like the red aggro list, there were a ton of erratas, tons of limits, and like tons of bans. And a lot of the cards that got limited either were preemptive or should have just been banned. Like the card, like the Janemba that got limited to one, that card sees absolutely zero play. I understand why they limited it. It was just like it's a free play card and they were being preemptive about it, but like that got limited to one when it sees absolutely zero play. And cards that are still broken, like Bergamo or New Ruler, are still allowed in the game.
Yeah, that was definitely a super out of left field limit. Although, again, like you said, I get why they did it, why they were a little bit preemptive about it. And that's the weird thing, because I agree with Koo said before about like them being a little bit too conservative sometimes, but like that hit was just like relatively unwarranted, right? But anyways, Koos, how do you feel about when Bandai limits cards to one?
Well, I played a deck full of one-ups on stream once, so I think I'm a big fan of one-ups. I do like the one-up bans because, hey, yeah, it does create that stackiness, but guess what? It's a card game. It's supposed to be stacky. You're supposed to get lucky at times and, get that one-of and add in variance to the game. You don't want the games to be absolutely stalled where it's like a turn-based, okay, this deck does A, I'm gonna do B, and it's just scripted. I think one-offs create variants like that, and I like it. That's what card games are about, getting lucky here and there. So yeah, I'm a big fan of one-offs.
I see, I see. Coming from the TFT salt bucket with RNG, but no, I'm just kidding. But anyways, so moving on from that point, so Ryan made me think of another question just a second ago, where cards like Bergamo Ferocious Roar, King Piccolo New Ruler, they were limited to one, and when that happened, most of us agreed on the team, and I'm sure a lot of people share this idea where they limited the cards to one because they were getting championship pack reprints, right? And if they were not getting champ pack reprints, they probably would have got banned to 0 copies per deck. So I guess my question is, like, there's a lot of talk, especially about Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm not sure if this is the same thing in Magic or Pokemon, but at least in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like pretty obvious that the ban list is it's kind of like a ploy to like sell and push new product. It's not always like a balancing tool. I personally think Bandai has done mostly right by the community in trying to use the ban list as more of a balancing tool than a sales point. But yeah, so Ryan, do you think that this general idea of they limited the cards to one because they were about to print the champ pack reprints, do you think that's okay or acceptable or even moral?
Yeah, I'm very iffy on it because there's like benefits to both sides. Like on a competitive side, like if the card should just be banned, they should just be banned from the competitive standpoint. But the main consumer isn't the competitive players, and that product was planned 6 months ahead of time. So they didn't plan to ban these cards or allow these cards or anything. Like that winter promo, I'm sure they decided that at least 6 months ahead of time. So like it's tough for them to be like, okay, like we're playing this whole new season, 3 months of regionals, and if you win, you get 2 banned cards. So I think it would have just been really rough for like the organized play for that season. So I kind of understand it in that aspect, but like from a competitive standpoint, I think the card should just be banned. But I understand why they don't just cater completely to the competitive players, and they have to try and promote their tournament. They can't just switch up the pricing on the fly and get new stuff printed and shipped out and everything.
For sure, yeah. That's something that a lot of players I don't think totally understand is like you can't only cater to the competitive players. You have to have a casual player base to have a successful game, right? Koos, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. I'm pretty sure that's what happened with the whole Bergamo reprint, that, because it was given as a prize, they just limited it to one. But I don't think it's that significant either. I feel like if it really was a game impacting card, they probably would have banned it. Um, I think Bergamo at one kind of makes sense. That's a stacky card, right? Like it's really hard to play around. Um, but yeah, like I think it makes sense. So I'm okay with it. It's just a lesson learned for next time. They just gotta be a little bit more careful.
Yeah, for sure. And they are like crazy powerful cards. It's super wild to think that Bergamo was ever like a legal four of. Like the fact that the one of is so strong now is kind of wild to think about that. But one thing that I do kind of think about now with that in mind is like obviously Dragon Ball Super, we have the design philosophy of secret rares, right? Like just these one of types of cards, you draw them, they're supposed to be like, paradigm shifting. They're supposed to turn the tide of the game like instantly, right? But now we have other cards like that, and a lot of them seem to be in yellow, right? We have Cold Bloodlust, we have Bergamo. In red, there's Piccolo New Ruler. And there's also the cards that like people just generally play as one ofs, like Swift Retaliation Cooler. So with these limit to ones and like the idea of SCRs and Dragon Ball like being one of the most consistent games in the market, do you feel like that kind of like maybe changes the way the game is played, and that's kind of like a result of the ban list? What do you think, Ryan?
I mean, overall, I'm not the biggest fan of it. Like Ku said, he likes the exciting moments. He likes dying card games, and I understand that. But I'm just a very competitive player. I really like the consistency. I think that like the better player should be rewarded for outplaying their opponent, and having like randomness or sackiness, just adds variance to it. Where the not a skilled opponent can sneak out games, which it is great for like those players attending tournaments, because like at the beginning of the game when we saw like a very consistent format, it was more slower paced. You saw the same players topping all the time. Where now there's more like variance in who's topping because of these different things. So it's really hit or miss for the very competitive players. I'm sure a lot of them don't like it, but for the like semi-competitive players, for the more casual players, that give them a better chance of performing well. I'm sure they're a fan of it, and overall, I'm sure that's the majority of the people, which is why Bandai generally caters to that.
Gotcha. So, with this kind of discussion on the ban list, I do kind of have like a closing question. We'll start with Koos here. So, overall, I want to know what you guys think. Do you guys think that Bandai has been doing a more positive or more negative job with the ban list, and you can be as honest as you guys want with that? And what would you change about like any ban list going forward? Koos, why don't you go ahead?
I've been here since the beginning, right? So compared to the beginning, for sure, they've definitely made a lot of improvements. Once again, the frequency is a really good thing, but there's always room to improve, in my opinion. I like to see a lot of different decks be very playable. I like it when, casual can play the game more competitively, so they don't feel like they're just always losing and not having a good time. I don't like it when certain decks have to be proven broken before they get hit. Example, Cell Surge. Like, we all knew Cell Surge is very strong. The whole community knew Cell Surge was very strong, but because Cell Surge never really won an event, they didn't decide to like take a hit on Ribrianne. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of that. That's something they could improve on, and I think they could improve on that with more player feedback, especially with competitive player feedback. So I think they could definitely improve on that by just honestly being more communicative throughout the whole process.
And Ryan, take it away. What do you think?
Yeah, so first off, I want to say I 100% agree with Goose on the preemptive, like not being preemptive on certain things. So, um, as some people know, but I'm sure not everyone knows, recently they have been reaching out to competitive players and getting some feedback. I do like that, and I think that should definitely continue and continue to get feedback because I think that's been part of the reason why the most recent ban lists have been better than the ones previously. But like for example, when we were giving feedback before, I suggested on I think the most recent ban list, yeah, the most recent ban list, I was like, with all the aggro being hit, Rubrian should be errated, and I'm not a fan of erratas. Rubrian should be errated to mono green leaders. So the card is completely fine in every single deck except Cell Surge. Literally, pretty much can't be played in Cell Surge because that deck is just too good at what it does. Like it's just an oppressive deck. And while didn't win Nats, it got third. It won the French Nats, and Duvall side decked 10 cards against the deck. The fact that you have to side deck 10 cards to not lose to a deck is oppressive. That shouldn't be in the game. So like, well, the results weren't there. Like they should have some more foresight on how the format's going to develop, and I think a lot of that comes with feedback from competitive players. So I really think they should continue that moving forward and have better channels to reach out to Bandai or to contact Bandai. Because currently there's a few people that are, work with Bandai. I don't think they have official titles or anything that we can contact, but there's no like official channel. There's no one to go to and make suggestions, make feedback. I know. I think it was George Aspire suggested an end of year like little recap where we talk about like the things that could be improved. And I thought that was a great idea. I think that should be done like quarterly, like every 3 months. And I know that Bandai, obviously is a major company. They plan stuff months ahead of time, so we know we should be able to discuss these things months like ahead of time. We shouldn't be doing it once a year, in my opinion. If we do it more frequently, then these things can get fixed. Like organized play can get developed because everything's definitely gotten better the last 2 years. Like Bandai's definitely seems like they care more now. They're more invested into the competitive scene, not just here but internationally. I think the international scene has really developed. And like now you even see, I'm sure it's just distribution issues, but like they're getting product before we are. So like now they could possibly develop the meta game before we do, and we used to be developing the meta game before them because we were getting product first. So I think they've been doing a really good job with the ban list and improving the organized play. But I'd just like to see more player feedback overall. That's like the biggest thing for me.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely think that was a great idea from George for sure. I totally agree with you on Cell Surge and with Koos as well. Like they maybe should have been a bit more preemptive on that. I personally don't think any deck should be able to take your hand to like 0 multiple times a game, but that's probably a topic for another discussion like this. So hopefully we'll do more of this in the future. But I do want to thank Koos and Ryan for taking the time to do this with us. Hopefully you guys had a decent time. Hopefully you guys watching also enjoy this type of video. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this type of video, any topics you want us to cover, and hopefully I can get 2 new guys on next time. But yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
See you guys.
Peace.